You don't need more discipline. You don't need more miles. What if the very thing you believe is making you stronger is slowly breaking your body down? And the reason you're stuck isn't that you're doing too little, but because you're doing too much. Let me start with a question that might make you uncomfortable. How many times have you skipped a run because work ran late, your body felt drained, or life simply got in the way, and then felt guilty for the rest of the day? Not casual guilt, the heavy kind, the voice in your head that says, "You're falling behind." Real runners don't skip workouts. If you really cared, you'd find a way. You open your phone and see it everywhere. Runners are posting 6 or 7 days a week, smiling, disciplined, consistent, and without realizing it, you start questioning your identity. Maybe I'm not a real runner. Maybe I'm just not built for this. So you push harder. You run on tired legs. You squeeze in miles when your mind is exhausted. You convince yourself that pain is part of the process, that suffering equals progress. But something strange happens. The more you force it, the worse it gets. Your runs feel heavier. Your motivation fades. Small aches turn into real pain. And one day, you're not just slower. You're burned out, injured, or quietly thinking about quitting. If this sounds familiar, pause for a moment, because what I'm about to say may completely change how you see running. You are not weak. You are not undisciplined, and you are not failing. You've been following a rule that was never designed for your body. Runforce Mindset welcomes you. If you value science-based training and want to stop guessing your way to progress, make sure you subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing insights that actually work. Running is not a moral test. It is a biological stimulus. And like any powerful stimulus, the difference between progress and damage comes down to dosage. Stay with me until the end of this video, because the conclusion may feel almost forbidden, yet it might be exactly what your body has been asking for all along. If this message resonates with you, please subscribe to support the channel and motivate us to create more high-quality content. Before we continue, let me ask you one question. Which do you believe leads to better long-term progress? A, running more days every week, no matter what. B, running less, but with precision and recovery. Comment A or B below. If running were truly about effort and willpower, pushing harder would always move you forward. But the reason it doesn't is that that's not how the body works. Most runners believe that every mile they run is a deposit into their fitness account. That belief feels logical, even responsible, but physiologically, it's backwards. When you run, you are not building fitness. You are creating controlled damage. Muscle fibers are disrupted. Tendons are stressed. Energy stores are depleted. The run itself leaves you in a temporarily weaker state than when you started. This isn't a problem. It's the design. Fitness is not built during the run. It is built after the run, when the body is given the time and resources to adapt. During rest, your system repairs tissue, strengthens structures, and prepares itself to handle the same stress more efficiently next time. This process, supercompensation, is where progress actually lives. To understand this, imagine sunlight on your skin. A short, intentional exposure triggers a tan. Stay out too long, and the same stimulus turns destructive. You don't get a deeper tan, you get burned. Running follows the same biological rule. Stress only creates adaptation when recovery can keep up. The mistake most runners make is assuming that more stress automatically leads to more progress. In reality, excessive stress without sufficient recovery overwhelms the system. Instead of adapting, the body goes into protection mode. Hormones shift, fatigue accumulates, performance stalls. The goal of training is not to tolerate the most pain. The goal is to apply just enough stress to signal adaptation, then step away and let the body do its work. That is the foundation on which everything else in this video is built. The magic number: why 3 days work. Once you understand that adaptation depends on recovery, the next question becomes unavoidable. How often can you apply stress and still allow the body to adapt instead of breaking down? This is where reality collides with the run more culture. Research and long-term coaching data point to a clear pattern. 2 runs per week are usually enough to maintain your current level of fitness, but they rarely move the needle forward. To actually improve, to run faster, feel stronger, and build real endurance, the threshold is surprisingly low. 3 days per week. Not 5, not 7, 3. At first, that number can feel almost insulting, as if it's a compromise for people who aren't serious. But biologically, 3 well-executed runs create a powerful rhythm: stress, recovery, adaptation. Each session sends a clear signal, and the rest days in between allow the body to respond fully instead of playing catch-up. Beyond that point, returns begin to shrink. Adding more days does not multiply progress. It adds complexity, fatigue, and risk. For runners balancing work stress, family obligations, and limited sleep, additional training days often compete with recovery instead of supporting it. The result is a body that is constantly stimulated but never fully restored. This is why many runners plateau despite running more than ever. Their systems are overloaded, not undertrained. Progress stalls not because the body is lazy, but because it is overwhelmed. 3 days is not a shortcut. It is a biological sweet spot, a frequency that respects how the human body actually adapts. When those 3 days are placed intentionally, they become enough to move forward without slowly digging yourself into a hole. But this is where many runners misunderstand the idea of running less, and that misunderstanding is what causes 3 days a week to fail. Reducing frequency does not make training easier. It makes it more precise. When you run 5 or 6 days a week, mistakes are often diluted. One poorly paced run can be absorbed by volume. Fatigue hides inefficiency. Progress feels like it's happening simply because you're always in motion. With only 3 runs, there is nowhere to hide. Each session carries more weight. Each decision, how fast you start, how hard you push, how long you go, matters more. A single run done at the wrong intensity doesn't just waste time, it compromises the entire week. Instead of sending a clear signal to adapt, it adds noise to the system. This is why some runners try low-volume training and conclude that it doesn't work. The problem isn't the number of days in Sushid. The problem is that fewer sessions demand clarity. Without a purpose, 3 runs quickly become 3 opportunities to accumulate fatigue without direction. Low frequency exposes inefficiency. It reveals whether your training has structure or whether you've been relying on repetition alone. It forces you to confront how you actually train, not how often you train. Running 3 days a week is powerful, but only if every run earns its place. Without intention, the reduced schedule doesn't protect you. It magnifies every mistake you make. And once every run begins to matter, one hidden mistake suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. Most runners don't fail because they train too hard. They fail because they train in the middle. Day after day, they head out at a pace that feels productive, fast enough to feel accomplished, slow enough to survive. It's familiar, it's comfortable, and it quietly sabotages progress. This is the gray zone. It doesn't announce itself as a problem. In fact, it feels responsible. You finish tired but not destroyed. You break a sweat, log the miles, and move on with your day. But physiologically, this intensity sits in the worst possible place. It's too demanding to allow real recovery, yet not demanding enough to force meaningful adaptation. Fatigue accumulates, but fitness does not. Over time, this creates a dangerous illusion. You're running consistently, yet getting slower. Motivation fades not because you're lazy, but because your body never gets a clear signal on what to adapt to. Everything becomes blurry. One simple way to reveal this trap is through breathing and speech. When intensity is truly easy, conversation flows freely. When it is truly hard, speech breaks down completely. The gray zone lives in between, where words come out strained and effort feels awkward rather than purposeful. Escaping this zone requires intention. Easy running must feel almost embarrassingly slow, allowing the body to recover and rebuild. Hard running must be clearly defined, uncomfortable by design, and limited in duration. There is no benefit in hovering between the two. The gray zone is not dramatic, but it is relentless. Left unchecked, it slowly drains progress while convincing you that you're doing everything right. Once you step out of the gray zone, training stops feeling random and begins to take on structure and purpose. This is where the 3-day framework reveals its real power. Each run is no longer just another workout, but a specific signal sent to the body. The first run of the week is designed to sharpen the system. Short, controlled bursts of faster running wake up the nervous system, improve coordination, and remind your body how to move efficiently. These efforts are brief and intentional, followed by full recovery, so speed is trained without lingering fatigue. You finish feeling alert, not drained. The second run targets something deeper, your ability to sustain effort. This is where controlled discomfort lives. The pace is challenging but stable, demanding focus rather than aggression. Over time, this kind of work raises the speed you can hold before fatigue takes over. Running begins to feel smoother and more controlled, even as you move faster. This is the session that builds confidence, the sense that you can keep going without fighting your body. The final run of the week does the opposite of the first two. It slows everything down. The pace is deliberately gentle, allowing breathing to settle and the body to stay relaxed. This is where endurance is built quietly. Capillaries expand, mitochondria multiply, and the body becomes better at using fat as fuel. Mentally, it becomes a reset, a reminder that not every run needs to be a test. Together, these three runs form a complete system. Speed, strength, and endurance are all addressed without excess. Nothing is wasted, and every session earns its place. When training is structured this way, progress no longer depends on how much pain you can tolerate, but on how well you respect the process. This is where a deeper mindset shift has to happen. Many runners are unconsciously chasing exhaustion. They equate feeling destroyed with having trained well. If a run doesn't leave them drained, they assume it wasn't effective. But fatigue is not proof of progress. It is simply a signal that stress has been applied. The runners who improve over years, not months, think differently. They value clarity over chaos. They understand that doing less can require more discipline than doing more, because it demands patience and restraint. It requires resisting the urge to add extra miles just to feel productive. Consistency is built not by heroic weeks, but by repeatable ones. A schedule that fits into your life, one you can execute even when work is stressful or sleep is imperfect, is far more powerful than an ambitious plan you can only follow for a few weeks. The body adapts to patterns, not intentions. Quality training removes drama. It replaces guilt with confidence because every run has a reason to exist. Over time, this approach builds trust. Trust that you are doing enough and that more effort is not always the answer. When you stop measuring success by how hard you push and start measuring it by how well you recover and adapt, running becomes sustainable again. And when that trust begins to form, something unexpected happens. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself through constant effort. This is your permission to rest, not as a reward and not as a sign of weakness, but as an essential part of progress. Rest is where the body finishes the work that training starts. It is where tissues rebuild, the nervous system resets, and motivation quietly returns. Without it, even the smartest plan eventually collapses. Stepping back does not mean you care less. It means you understand more. You begin to see that growth comes from balance, not pressure. The days you do not run are not empty. They are active contributors to adaptation. When you stop comparing your schedule to someone else's highlight reel, running becomes lighter. There is less guilt, less urgency, and more clarity. You show up for each run with intention, not obligation. Progress does not come from constantly doing more. It comes from doing enough, then allowing the body the space it needs to become stronger. And once you accept rest as part of the process, one final truth becomes clear. With fewer runs, precision matters more than ever. When you train only a few days each week, there is no room for guesswork. An easy run that drifts too fast or a hard run that is poorly controlled can quietly undo the balance you've created. The difference between progress and stagnation often comes down to intensity, not effort, but accuracy. This is why generic plans and default training zones so often fail busy runners. They ignore individual physiology. Heart rate responses, recovery capacity, and stress tolerance vary widely. And when those differences aren't accounted for, even well-intended training misses the mark. Low-volume training works best when every run hits the right signal at the right time. That level of clarity removes doubt and replaces it with confidence. You know when to push and when to hold back. If you want to improve without sacrificing your health or your life outside of running, the solution isn't doing more. It's learning how to train with precision. Build a plan that fits your body and your reality, and let progress follow naturally. At its core, this message goes far beyond running. It is a reminder of how growth truly works. Progress is not built by constant pressure. endless effort or proving your worth through exhaustion. It is built through intentional stress followed by sufficient recovery. When you respect that rhythm, your body responds with strength instead of resistance, clarity instead of burnout. Running becomes sustainable again, not because you do less for the sake of doing less, but because you finally do what matters. The deeper lesson is simple but powerful. More is not always better. This applies not only to training, but to work, relationships, and life itself. When you constantly push without space to recover, you don't grow, you erode. But when you choose focus, balance, and precision, progress becomes inevitable. So here's a question for you. Where in your life are you pushing harder when you might actually need to step back and recover? Please share your thoughts in the comments so others can learn from your perspective. And if this video gave you a new way of thinking, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us and stay connected for more meaningful content ahead.